All right, well, let's do a couple of these WWE notes, Lance. Your Invasion pay-per-view, some of the memories. We can do more next week as well.
Yeah, the biggest thing, and it's funny, we talked about the debate in the production meeting of going with Buff and Booker or me and Booker, and I lost out the selection, and they went with Buff. The main event of the Invasion was that multi-man thing, which was done after the formation of the Alliance. If you remember that great angle where the WWE guys came out to chase off the WCW guys, and then there was that turn, and they realized that they were all former ECW guys, and the WCW Invasion was added, took on a new element with the ECW Invasion. And it was like, to me, it was the best working angle they did with the Invasion. And I remember telling Paul, because at the end there was that weird battle royal 5-on-5-on-5 or whatever the fuck it was, where the Alliance was formed with ECW and WCW joining, and we had to enter through the ECW guys entered through the arena, and we had to take an elevator up. And I remember in the elevator, Paul was just, the Cheshire Cat, grinning, shit-eating grin like crazy, because the ECW Invasion seemed to work so much better than the WCW one. And I remember telling him, it's like, you realize this is all over in like 5 minutes, right? He sort of looked at me. I'm like, as soon as we join the WCW guys, it's like, it's not going to be the same. And he's like, yeah, you're right. And it was funny, too, that the first big Alliance promo, Paul Heyman was the one that cut the vast majority of the verbiage. And earlier, like weeks or a month earlier, a couple weeks earlier, there was a promo I was going to cut, and Brian Gewirtz wanted me to use the word wrestling. And he's like, we're not allowed to use that word. He says, I wonder if maybe I can just convince Vince, for one time that you can say it, because it's the only word that fits for you. And he comes back with, no, we can't say it. And then in this Heyman promo, he's going wrestling and wrestler and wrestler and wrestling the whole time. And I'm in the back going, well, fuck, I couldn't say it once. He said it 12 times. And the next week, Stephanie McMahon was the voice of the Alliance, and Paul barely talked again after that. But leading into the Invasion pay-per-view, I was considered to be part of the 5 for the 5-on-5 instead of Rhino. Jericho used to snoop and listen in or get people to report booking meetings or production meeting notes. And there was this is the Invasion pay-per-view, and we have both the Dudleys and Rhino on the invading side, who've all been wrestling in WWE late. They're really, other than Booker and who was the other? Was it DDP?
It was Booker, DDP, yeah.
Yeah, they're the only true invaders here. Maybe if we replace Rhino and put Lance in there, at least it's the majority of that team are outsiders. So the debate was me or Rhino, and if you've watched the Invasion, spoiler alert, it was Rhino. And I again missed out on what would have been the main event, and instead I ended up in the opener, because the tag that I was in, the me and Mike Awesome against Edge and Christian, when that program was originally going to start, it was Mike Awesome's program. And maybe it was to keep me available in case they changed their mind on the main. But it was going to be over the name Mike Awesome versus the guys that reeked of awesomeness. And if you remember back then when the angle proceeded, it was obviously they picked Rhino because they very quickly turned it into my program of the serious guy versus the offbeat shenanigans guy. And the build to that match was more the feud between me and them, and Mike was just my partner, where originally it was going to be the feud with Mike, and he was going to have a partner. Perhaps it would have been Rhino if I got moved into the main event, but Rhino got the spot, and I assume because of that made a shitload more money than I did on that pay-per-view, because considering the buy rate, I would like to think I got shafted big time on that. But it was fun working Edge and Christian in that, and the build to that was a lot of fun. Getting to work with both Edge and Christian was great. I remember Christian did the Jimmy dive where he slipped off Edge's back and tumbled out onto us. And the dive was just horrible because Christian slipped, but I took the axe kick to the top of the head, catching him, and actually sort of had that, jammed up my neck with a, ow, fuck, that really hurt, before we had to roll in and finish. And just because it's a fun story, I found out afterwards Christian was hot. I often say things that make my friends hot, But in the finish...
You don't say.
Yeah, you don't. In the finish, and I believe that's what we did, Mike's going to be going for the running awesome bomb on Edge. And the idea was that they came up with, or Christian or Edge, I don't know who, but it wasn't me or Mike, that Christian would then spear Mike, and Mike would drop him. And I made the comment of, it's like, I don't think Jay's big enough. It's like, Awesome's way bigger. Edge is bigger. You've got a freight train running at a sedan. The sedan's winning in the spear. And I guess this was the time where Christian was still fighting the cruiserweight stigma and not being a big guy, and me just blatantly, without thinking, voicing my opinion that he wasn't big enough to be the one spearing the bigger guys. He wasn't too happy. That is what we did, though, I believe. And I remember really enjoying the match, and I love working with both guys. But yeah, Jay was not too happy about my thinking he was too small to spear the two of them and have it effective. But life goes on. And then from there, we went to the IC program, where I won the IC title from Albert, so that we could... I was sort of the fulcrum to, you know, leverage the Christian and Edge split and the... turning of Edge into a single guy. So we built to SummerSlam, which was the IC title run, and that's where we did that stupid angle beforehand. And it's like, I never understood why they did it. It was dumb, just because I guess they thought it was funny. If you remember when during my No Shenanigans days, they pantsed me, and I was wearing Power Ranger underwear.
Yes.
And I remember when Gewurz mentioned it, I'm like, but why? And I was like, well, it'll be funny. I'm like, but what part of my character would actually wear those? Is this going anywhere? And they're like, no, it's just funny. I'm like, but if I have this other side of my character, clearly, like, are we ever going to do anything? They're like, no. I'm like, okay. And then the rib was, they sent, I think it was Whippleman. They sent him out to buy Power Ranger underwear for me. And he got out there and he's like, they don't sell these in adult sizes. So he had to buy, like, you know, large Fruit of the Loom tighty whities and like 4 pair of Power Ranger underwear. And the seamstresses had to custom make them because they couldn't buy them. And when you stitch all of that extra Power Ranger shit onto your underwear, they're no longer stretchy. And I could barely get them on. It's like they were cutting off my circulation damn near. But that was also the first time I wore the black and red thinner spandex tights from my ECW days in WWE, because they come up with this idea, but the tights that I was wearing at the time fit so tight. I'm like, you're never going to be able to pull these down fast enough or well enough to pull this off. So I had to pull my house show tights out for it. And just, it's so WWE. And because at the time, everyone in the Alliance was, you know, trying not to get heat. I remember them coming to me and it's like, okay, we don't want you to oversell your pants around your knees like your stomach. It's like, we want you to pull them up like it was realistic, but don't pull them up too fast that they don't get to see them. And I'm like, oh, fuck. How am I, you know what I mean? If I wait too long, it's like, oh, you took too long and it came off fake. If I pull them up too soon, they're like, oh, you didn't want to be seen in your underwear. I'm like, I'm going to get heat no matter what I fucking do here. So it was really annoying. Although I don't think I ended up getting yelled at, so I hit the time right for it. But again, we went on, had the
Write your notes. You didn't just wear Power Ranger undies. You wore custom-made Power Ranger undies.
Yep.
That's a character trait there. And producer Jared says, I was very young at the time, but I loved the Power Ranger spot. It made me a fan of Lance. I liked Hogan and Lance.
Actually, Tony Chimmel's kid came to the, like, I think it was like 6 months or a year later, came to some of the house shows. And I was Tony Chimmel's kid's favorite wrestler because of the Power Ranger underwear. But because I'm me and I like to dot all I's, I actually later on pitched an idea to bring this angle full circle. Because Hurricane and I had been associated with the Hurra League. And it was right before they did the Rosie superhero in training thing. I had pitched the idea where Hurricane would be in a match or whatever and get jumped. And I would have the mask superhero outfit and I would run in and make the save. And then I would leave And then Hurricane had come back into the locker room. When he came into the locker room, it would just be me in my regular outfit. And he'd be like, oh, thanks, man. I'm like, what are you talking about? And it's like, I would deny it's me. And there would be this secret child inside, this serious fake front that Lance Storm has always put up. And teaming with Hurricane that one time, you know, the times we did earlier sort of sparked the, hey, this could be fun. And the Power Ranger underwear was something I always wore because secretly there was this childlike kid inside of me that always wanted to be a superhero. And we would progress with the superhero version of me saving Hurricane and working with Hurricane while Lance Storm constantly denied that it was him. And I remember I pitched it, and there was something about the, yeah, you know, we really just, you know, see Hurricaning you guys as single wrestlers, and we're not going to do that. As great as it is, I think it'd be a lot of fun. And I think it was around the time when, you know, La Resistance, and they had a lot of, and Jindrak and Cade, they had a lot of really green heel tag teams. And I had pitched this as a babyface tag team option where we could really carry these guys. And they're like, no, we see you both as, you know, singles guys. So they didn't do the angle. And then 2 months later, Hurricane's in an angle with the superhero in training. I'm like, fuck me. And then I think shortly after that, I got put into a tag team with Val Venus. And I'm just like, yeah, thanks, guys. But yeah, I liked dotting my I's and crossing my T's. But one last quick story before we wrap. The end of the invasion was the, whatever pay-per-view it was, where there was the Immunity Battle Royal. Well, all the invading forces guys would be in this Battle Royal. And whoever, I guess it was whatever side won the war, their guy would get a immunity from being fired. And yet again, I was told that that day the debate was Test or I would win the Immunity Battle Royal and would be the one sole survivor that doesn't get fired. And I lost that debate too. I guess I should have been more of a politician and fought for these spots. But Test won the Immunity Battle Royal, and that led to me going to WWE New York and being a janitor. And then that silly, well, it was a good angle if I was a babyface. But to bring me back post-invasion was the me begging Ric Flair for a job, and he kept booking me against, you know, Big Show and then Kane. And it's like, I just have to beat, you know, the immovable object, the irresistible force to get my job back. And I kept telling them, I'm like, this is a babyface angle. It's like the small guy that's going to overcome and win his job back, you know, from the heel manager that keeps stacking the deck. And they're like, no, but you're a heel. I'm like, okay, but this angle is a babyface. Which led to me eventually beating The Rock in a singles match. I was told it was originally going to be by pinfall, but Rock was doing a pinfall loss to someone else the week or two before, so they decided to hedge their bets, and I did the count-out win over The Rock with some test interference. But yeah, I won my job back in WWE by beating the Great One, The Rock, who was actually a lot of fun to work with.
Which, of course, means that via MMA math, I, Bryan Alvarez, have beaten The Rock and Brock Lesnar.
You've never beaten Lance Storm.
So, man, me and Cody got something in common, brother. Anyway, let's get some